Black Myth Wukong is a wake-up call. This game, for many others, including myself, represents what many of us have been asking for a long time, which is just a game that's a game. Nothing else. No modern gaming trend chasing, no microtransactions, no live service model. It's not a platform for future expansions. It's just a game that's delivered at a fair price that gives us an incredible experience. That's exactly what this game is. A damn good one at that. Through fabricated controversies and criticism steeped in biases, this game has persevered. It has sent shockwaves across the industry. It has exploded in popularity, and it's going to leave a lasting impact. Today, what I want to do is I want to talk about my experience with Black Myth Wukong, but more than that, I want to talk about how this game embarrassed the people that tried to stop it, and what it means for games to come. The gaming industry is at a crossroads. For years, major publishers have doubled down on the belief that live service games are the future, insisting that players crave ongoing multiplayer experiences with microtransactions, season passes, and endless content updates. They've argued that single-player games are a relic of the past, too niche to sustain in an era where constant engagement and monetization are king. Yet, the past few years have told a completely different story. Games like Baldur's Gate 3, Elden Ring, Tears of the Kingdom, and Hogwarts Legacy have not only shattered sales records, but have captured the hearts of millions of players worldwide. These widely single-player experiences, with their rich narratives, immersive worlds, and focus on player agency, have proven that there is a massive untapped hunger for games that prioritize quality over quantity, and meaningful experiences over endless grinds. Now entering the stage is Black Myth Wukong, a game from a country that is not necessarily known for releasing AAA titles, and it's another beacon of what players have been yearning for, a well-crafted, story-driven experience that delivers on its money, telling the tale of one of the most well-known literary works of all time, that doesn't rely on the trappings of live service models or in-game shops, selling 10 million copies within days of the game's release, and breaking concurrent player number records with over 2 million players on Steam. This shift in player preferences isn't just a fluke. It's a sign of a deeper change within consumer behavior, a change that the industry can no longer afford to ignore. Black Myth Wukong was supposed to be just that, a myth. I remember the early trailers and a lot of the dialogue around it at the time, which is that this is an unknown developer, a first-time developer, a Chinese developer using Unreal Engine 5, and well, we already see the history with some of those games. This is likely a scam. I thought it was. Many people thought it was. But it's real. It's so real that it doesn't feel real when you're playing it. This is one of the most gorgeous games that I've played in a long time. It feels great to play. The story is absolutely incredible. There is a stop animation cutscene in the best-looking game in 2024. The creativity, originality, and beauty of this game is something that many modern developers can't even comprehend. But it's an experience that players have been needing for a long time. Black Myth Wukong is just a damn good game. It's not revolutionizing game design or reinventing the wheel, it's just delivering a high-quality experience at a fair price. I'm a little over 40 hours into the game, and I've taken my time playing it just because it's just that good of an experience that I want to savor it. The game is exactly what many others have said, a boss gauntlet. You explore areas and fight enemies, discover secrets, take on side quests, but ultimately you are fighting a boss every few minutes because the game just has that many of them. I think that one of the things I'm most impressed with is not just how many enemies there are, but how much variety there is in all of these different boss designs, enemy designs, and mechanics throughout the game. I felt like every few seconds I was playing the game, I was already seeing a new enemy type, learning new patterns or attack patterns from them, and gaining new abilities. Over the last few years, I've been so exhausted with generic AAA reskinning. Studios spending hundreds of millions of dollars, but they just keep copying and pasting the same enemy over and over with a recolor. However, Black Myth Wukong is the embodiment of variety. Whether it's a new enemy type, locations, abilities you learn, or spirits you collect, each time I sat down, I felt like I did not know what to expect. I think variety is really important in a game like this because if you're anything like me, the longer you play a game, the more it drags on, the more repetitive it starts to feel, and the more likely you are to just want to run through every section of the game just trying to get to the finish line because you want to say that you've beaten it. However, Black Myth Wukong does not let you go. This game sends out flashes of brilliance at every step, reimagining what the experience of a semi-linear action game can be, and pushing the medium forward. I was already impressed with how jaw-droppingly gorgeous this game is. However, ever so often, I would find these lookout points where you would go to sit and meditate, listen to calming music, seeing the masterpiece that is this game's world design, and being rewarded with a talent point upon completion. I'll be real, I don't really normally like this kind of thing. I see it as a waste of time. However, in a game like this, after fighting countless enemies, sweating it out on bosses, these meditation points facilitated making this game feel more like an experience rather than a game. It gave me the time that I needed, a moment to drink it in, refocus, and venture forth. I loved it. I remember when I finished Act 2, and I really hope other people share this experience, but I was met with a stop animation cutscene, and I just sat there awestruck. The artistry and imagination on display ripped me away from any other distractions. My attention was fully on the game. My respect was fully on the game. After this, I started taking notice to every sight and sound in the game, how well crafted some of the statues were, how areas never seemed to repeat themselves, how the music would flow in and out, trying to evoke a very specific emotion depending on what you were doing or where you were. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this game's story, character writing, voice acting, musical, and visual production. When I started playing, I knew that this game was going to be good, but I never imagined an action game or a first-time developer like Game Science to deliver a story experience rather than just telling you a story. You have to listen, truly listen when you're talking to NPCs because they'll often give you hints at side quests and objectives that will deepen your understanding of the story and its meaning. It blows my mind how few journalists and professional reviewers took note of how satisfying and unique the narrative delivery and overall experience of playing this game is. There is a timeless appeal to a game like this. It's delivering on something that goes far beyond entertainment. It's something deeper, it's something more personal, and ultimately more satisfying. More satisfying than the vast majority of games I've played over the last few years. And this is one of the reasons why I love seeing smaller studios and new studios come up, is because they get it. They still remember that a game is art first and a product second. And when you're a company like Game Science and you pour everything into a game because it's the game that you want to make and you love what you're making, well, this is the end result. A game that gets that message across, and it makes a lot of money. The profit comes after. You have to make a great game first. And when I look at failures like Concord, or I look at how poorly received Starfield was by its fans, I start seeing studios that have people that are just clocking in rather than locking in. And ultimately, I don't think it's sustainable. You can feel the reverence for Journey to the West through Black Myth Wukong. You see it in the art, you see it in the music, you see it in the characters, and the voice acting, and the writing, the stop motion, and the hand-drawn cutscenes. You see how much respect they have for the work that they were adapting. And for that, I've never been more disgusted with Western media's attempt to ruin it for everyone. As Black Myth Wukong continues to gain traction and impress gamers worldwide, it has also found itself at the center of a made-up controversy, particularly in the form of smear campaigns orchestrated by some Western journalists and media outlets. These efforts, often subtle yet pervasive, aim to undermine the game's success and cast doubt on its quality and legitimacy. The criticisms of Black Myth Wukong by certain Western outlets like IGN isn't about the game's content. I think it's a reflection of a broader discomfort with the rise of non-Western developers in the AAA space, and developers the media has no power over, which I think is all the more obvious as many of them have run to play defense for Sony's recent failure in Concord. The smear campaigns tend to focus on nitpicking details, spreading misinformation, and creating narratives that paint the game in a negative light, hoping, praying that people find them relevant and take their criticism seriously.
Because I'm a legitimate journalist.
Everybody's favorite gaming reviewers in Kotaku took to writing a lengthy review of Black Myth Wukong painted in a temper tantrum, with the introduction reading, "There's a moment in Black Myth Wukong where it is the perfect visual metaphor for the game's hopeful, proud ascension as China's big breakthrough into the Western AAA pantheon. Unfortunately, that moment is restricted, and we can't talk about it." There are moments in Black Myth Wukong of such enthralling beauty and visual poetry and myth-making, almost unlike anything we've seen in the current AAA gaming space right now. We can't show them to you or discuss their contents. There are realms of lore and mythology and parables and morality plays dancing with such wild abandonment and fantastical, whimsical, imaginative character work and design, giving depth and beauty and context to the otherwise obtuse narrative of Black Myth Wukong. We can't tell you anything about them. And the review continues like this. This childish behavior is in response to a leaked email from Game Science's PR partner asking creators who were given codes to refrain from talking about politics, feminist propaganda, fetishization, and other content that instigates negative discourse. What Kotaku, as well as many other journalists' response to this were, can be easily read as, "We are mad that we aren't allowed to talk about anything that doesn't have to do with the video game, so instead, we're going to write angry reviews with backhanded comments."
Legitimate journalists will take issue with this.
I'm going to keep it real. I don't know the context of this email. However, as a creator, this looks like a poorly written briefing for sponsored content. Journalists can seethe all they want. However, if you are paid to do a job, you do the job as instructed. What company is going to pay you to talk about their game and talk about unrelated things to the game that they are paying you to promote? You can claim censorship, that's fine, but these demands are no different than the expectations of anyone else who has a job, albeit these topics are a little bit more sensitive to China and specifically Black Myth Wukong, as the game has suffered at the hands of IGN and other outlets parroting misinformation about alleged sexism at Game Science. But they wouldn't understand that, would they? Because after all, they can't even do their own job. I mean, whoever's claiming there is a lack of diversity obviously never finished Chapter 3.
The face of the distant one.
I'm offended by this. Review after review of Black Myth Wukong soured by unconfirmed and mistranslated information, self-righteous, self-serving reviewers turned activists, docking review scores, attempting to push players away from this game, all in the name of their brand of justice. Tell me, where is the justice in docking review scores due to the lack of inclusivity and diversity in an adaptation of one of the most respected novels in China's cultural history? Because it doesn't include your modern beliefs. Wanting to culturally appropriate a game made by a Chinese developer, adapted from a Chinese novel, is beyond disgusting and abhorrent. You know, there was a game that came out earlier this year, Tales of Kenzera, this really cool Metroidvania game, very creative, that was made by an African developer with African characters. None of them said anything about diversity then. The logic is never applied evenly because they don't believe in it. It's just a convenient vehicle to maintain relevance. I am beyond happy that Game Science never responded to any of these allegations because they had no responsibility to have to do so. You're not responsible to game journalists. What authority do they hold? None. When I look around the industry right now and I see players that are playing games that they're not liking anymore because the game's going in a direction that they don't want, when I see games that are released that are failing and studios that are closing and people that are getting laid off, I'm seeing a lot of games that are being influenced by people that have no real power. Countless weirdos that are trying to shape games the way that they want them to be, rather than what the market wants it to be. I respect Game Science's choice here because they just focused on the game and putting the game out there. And at the end of the day, you let the market decide, not these people. I really hope that there are studios that are out there that take notice of this and realize that they're not responsible to these folks at all. They have no power over you. Make the game that you want to make. Pour everything you can into the game that you want to make. Release it out into the market and let the market decide if it's enough. You can't make everybody happy. It's impossible. And every time you try to do so, you're just going to make something that has no identity whatsoever, and it's not going to reach enough players. Concord is proof of that. That's exactly what happened with that game. It has no identity. It's been done before. It came out for $40, and players don't want it. They tried to stop the success of this game, but there was no stopping it. Now, as I mentioned previously, within days of the game launching, it had already hit 10 million copies sold, and on the day of its launch, it rose to 2.4 million concurrent players on Steam. Now it's steadily sitting over 1 million players as people have started to complete the game. A popular headline that ran for about a day was that the game had lost 2 million players within a short period of time. At 1400 UTC, the game was at its peak. At 2300 UTC, the game had lost millions of players. Some people had immediately started claiming that the game was being botted. However, this is a clear indication of how popular the game is in China, with many of those players helping Steam to break its all-time concurrent player count across the entire platform, as well as now being the second most played game under PUBG and dethroning Palworld. Now, there's an important story here that's not being discussed. If we look at the top 15 games all-time played on Steam, including free-to-play games, 7 of those games are widely single-player games, while 6 of them are live service, with 2 of them being Lost Ark and New World on life support. With as hard of a push as we have seen with live service games over the last few years, whether it's full live service or games adding adjacent features like in-game shops and battle passes to single-player games, we are seeing a massive shift from the side of the consumers towards single-player experiences, and can you blame us? Every time I see a new live service game release, I ask, what are you thinking? Players only have so much time and money, and when we are invested in other games, what makes you believe that we're going to come to play your game? Game Science could have easily went and made a gacha game over Black Myth Wukong, but they didn't. They ignored the trend in their country, and I think it was the right thing to do, and honestly, I think it was foresight more than anything else. Why do you think recently we've gotten games like Grand Blue Fantasy Relink or Stellar Blade, both games made by developers that primarily make and run gacha live service games, choosing to instead go to make premium games? Developers are waking up to the realization that there are so many players to sell to and not so much time and money that they can invest in other games. Sony's Concord, in contrast with Black Myth Wukong, is the perfect example of this. If you're going to release a live service game that costs $40 and brings nothing of value, you won't succeed. We're at a point of saturation in which you can no longer borrow time from players that are invested in other games. You have to make them quit playing other games to play yours. Or you have to offer something that isn't a live service so they can play it at their leisure. And this is where Black Myth Wukong and many other premium single-player experiences truly stand out. Unlike the countless live service games that are demanding our time and money for extended periods of time, these games offer a complete, self-contained experience, a premium single-player game that respects our time and our money. It's a game designed to be enjoyed, not endured. And that's something that resonates deeply with players who are growing increasingly disillusioned with the constant grind and monetization schemes that have come to define modern gaming so much. What Black Myth Wukong and similar titles prove is that there is a vast market for games that are focused on delivering a polished experience without reoccurring payments or perpetual engagement. These games remind us of the heart of gaming isn't the endless updates and battle passes, but it's the stories we tell, the worlds we explore, and the characters that we come to care about. In a way, Black Myth Wukong isn't just a commercial success, it's a statement. It's a declaration that players are ready for something different, something that offers more depth and quality over quantity and gimmicks. It's a challenge to the industry, daring developers to rethink their strategies and remember why players fell in love with gaming in the first place. I can't play more than 1 or 2 live service games, and I do this for a living. I just recently started playing Warframe, and I haven't even been able to find the time to go and play Final Fantasy XIV and complete its latest expansion. Look, I'll be honest with you guys. I'm not rich. I don't make a lot of money doing this. I made more money in construction than I do making YouTube videos, but I do love doing this, and I do think that a lot of people are probably a lot like me, and they just can't afford to be invested in that many games because no matter what you say, free to play or not, you're going to end up spending money on it. And putting yourself in a realm where you know you're going to be tempted to spend money, you just can't afford to because you have other things that you're responsible for or other things that you'd rather spend the money on entirely. And it's crazy that game studios have not come to the realization of this, that the more of these games that are out in the wild, the less likely you are to be able to capture an audience because players just can't move that freely. I'm sorry. It's not going to happen. We don't have that kind of money, nor do we have that kind of time. And unless you're going to do something to be able to kill another game, that's really the only way that you're going to find success. And it's crazy to me that they also haven't realized how much more predictable the success for a single player game is, a premium single player game is, over a live service game. We see countless live service games fail, but single player games, especially ones that are coming from AAA studios, still usually have their return on investment, as long as the people that are running the studio are smart enough to hire the right amount of people and make sure that they're not spending too much money before releasing the game. But that's a different story for another video. I do think that there's something else to say with this as well, especially looking with how popular this game is in China, because we really don't see that with Western games. The themes for Western games don't really translate to the East as well. That's pretty much across the board. It's with almost every game that's out there. Things are always really popular in the West, but they don't necessarily translate to the East. But the thing is that this game had no problem crossing the border the other way. And I think there's a reason for that. The wild popularity of a game like Black Myth Wukong speaks volumes about the current state of the gaming industry, particularly the fatigue that many players have started to feel towards repetitive themes that have dominated Western games for years. While Western developers have traditionally leaned heavily on familiar tropes, be it rehashed mythology, Greek or Norse, endless zombie apocalypses, military shooters, or the well-trodden paths of fantasy and sci-fi, Black Myth Wukong is refreshingly different. It introduces a rich tapestry of Chinese culture, mythology, and history that many Western players haven't encountered before. And if we have, oftentimes it's been through the lens of another country's perception of Chinese culture, providing a novel experience in a land that often feels stagnant. One of the key reasons why Black Myth Wukong resonates so strongly is precisely because it taps into a cultural and mythological framework that is largely unexplored in Western games, because we see so few Chinese releases of AAA quality. The story of Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, and his adventures through the journey to the West are legendary in Chinese culture, but are relatively unknown to Western gamers outside of knowing it loosely inspired Dragon Ball. This unfamiliarity adds a layer of intrigue and excitement that Western audiences are eager to explore. The game presents a world filled with strange and fantastical creatures, ancient legends, and philosophy themes that stand in stark contrast to the normal fanfare that we see from Western studios. Earlier in this video, I discussed the variety of enemies and bosses. The reason they can offer that kind of staggering variety is because there are so few of those designs that are used in other games. I need you guys to understand, this contrast is crucial. After years, decades of playing through the same iterations of the same concepts, whether it's the upteenth military shooter that's set in a vaguely Middle Eastern conflict, another dark fantasy gritty post-apocalyptic world overrun by zombies, or yet another fantasy epic that borrows heavily from Tolkien, players are hungry for something new. Black Myth provides a window into a different cultural worldview, one that feels fresh and invigorating compared to the often formulaic approaches that we've seen in Western games. The aesthetics of Chinese architecture, the fluidity and grace of martial arts, the intricate designs of mythical creatures. I can't tell you guys how many times I lost and had issues fighting certain bosses that used martial arts because none of it was familiar to me. The mechanics were not familiar to me. I'd never seen them in a game before. These elements combine to create a game that feels both exotic and authentic. It's a world that invites me to not only engage with a different type of storytelling, but immerse myself into a cultural experience that is vastly different than what I'm used to. In an industry where innovation often feels constrained by what's familiar and safe, Black Myth Wukong shows that there is a huge appetite for stories and settings that break the mold. It's a reminder that gaming, as a global medium, has the power to transcend cultural boundaries and introduce players to perspectives, ideas, and experiences that they otherwise wouldn't have. As the game industry has grown into the largest entertainment industry in the world, it has attracted investors and CEOs who are demanding safety, security, and consistency. And as a response to this, many of these studios have become stale. Many themes have become stale because it's safer to do what worked in the past. Whether it's a live service game or repeated themes or entitled journalists, Black Myth Wukong is a wake-up call, telling everyone what worked before works no more. I really do think that this game shows that there is a general interest, a general need for something different. And I think Baldur's Gate 3 was one of the first signs of that, because The industry had already made the assumption that turn-based games could never reach wider audiences. A game like that could never be successful. Yeah, look what it did. And I think that we're just kind of rolling around in a sea of mediocrity, completely devoid of creativity. And games like Black Myth or Elden Ring or Baldur's Gate 3 are those moments where we get to come up for fresh air and we get reminded of what games can be, what we can realistically expect for the prices that we're spending on some of these games. It's not to say that every single game that comes out should be an absolute massive hit, huge banger, but that's kind of the expectation that we have, that you're at least trying to hit that mark. But it definitely doesn't feel like that with many of the games that get released, especially for the prices that they're trying to charge. Black Myth really does feel fresh. Like, genuinely, it feels fresh. I can't tell you how many times I had problems fighting certain bosses just because I never recognized any of the attack patterns before. It threw me for a loop. It felt like I was playing Dark Souls or Elden Ring on fast forward. Yes, I know that it's not a Souls-like game, but with that said, you can't tell me like those bosses don't feel like it. Because, man, that big-headed baby. We need to talk about that big-headed baby. Right in the first act, I thought that was the first boss. I took like 2 or 3 hours to kill that thing. And when I did, I was so happy. And then I moved on, and then I found the real first boss, which is the one that gives you the transformation. And if I would have had that transformation, it would have made that fight so much easier. I would have beaten it way earlier than what I did. But, I mean, with that said, the rest of the game felt a lot more easier after that. But it's just been so refreshing. It really has. I initially went to stream the game because I like streaming games, right? I like having folks watch. But it's one of those games, and I feel like there's a lot of them that are out there that are like this, where I don't really want to have an audience for it because I just wanted to sit back and experience it. Because if you treat it like one of those kind of games, it really is an experience. There are so many times that I just got lost looking at some of the statues, how highly detailed they were, how completely different they were no matter where you went, which is crazy in a game like that, especially when you would think that they would reuse a lot of assets, but they don't. There's so much originality and artistry on display in this game. It is staggering. Unreal. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to make this video, was not only just to appreciate the game for what it is, but also to push back against a lot of the narratives that are out there around it, because they just don't appreciate it. They don't appreciate it because they didn't bend to what these Western journalists wanted them to say. And it's ridiculous. It's childish. And it's really disappointing as a consumer, because these are the people that are trying to be tastemakers. Sorry, my voice. I've talked a lot continually for a very long time. Losing my voice now. It's disappointing as a consumer because the thing is that it's just going to show that you really can't trust anyone other than yourself. You can't. You can't read what they say because often it's going to be steeped in criticisms that are so biased. It's unreal. It's just crazy. If you go through and you read some of these things, it blows my mind the way that they would try to paint this game and the kind of picture that they've been trying to paint it in. It really is sad. Their relevance is burning up faster than I can make videos on it.